It's another Friday, the beginning of a new weekend and a day for legislative program The Maze on ASO Television. My name is Rosemary Kokotega and I am glad to welcome you to this edition. The Maze is the entire proceeding of the two chambers of the National Assembly every week, summed up in about 45 minutes. It airs every Friday at 8 p.m. That is this time, and it is a pleasure to always have you. A peep into the week. Public hearing on 4 tax reform bills at both chambers. House committee calling for tax exemption orders for persons with disabilities. Speaker Abbas' statement on inadequate colleges of education in Nigeria. Watch ASO Television on DSTV 392, StarTimes TV 127, Free TV 507, and on the UHF band 38. Also, all editions of The Maze are on ASO Radio and Television YouTube channel. Like our page and please do subscribe.
We are a nation blessed with people of diverse cultures, religions, languages, and opinions. It is ironic that we are now being ripped apart by our greatest strength, our diversity. We have allowed intolerance, insensitivity, bigotry, and nepotism to blind our vision of the greatness we can achieve working together as one. We may not have the same culture, nor religion, nor language, but we all belong to the same nation by the divine will of God. We did not choose to be Nigerians. Nigeria chose us. This nation is our divine heritage, and if we open our eyes, we will realize that what divides us pales in comparison to what unites us. And by the comparison and conciliation of our differences, we will grow until our differences disappear. Our unity cannot be willed by mere declarations, nor do we get unity by ignoring the questions that beg for answers. We must celebrate our diversity and debate our differences without fracturing our unity. Our strength is not in our numbers, but in our unity, because even the weak become strong when united. Nigeria unite.
This message is brought to you by Abuja Broadcasting Corporation, owners and operators of ASO Radio 93.5 FM Abuja, ASO Television DSTV Channel 392, StarTimes Terrestrial Channel 127, Free TV Channel 507, People's TV Channel 285, and UHF Channel 38.
This is The Maze on ASO Television. Down to proceedings. One major proceeding at the National Assembly within the week is the public hearing on the famous 4 tax reform bills conducted by both chambers. This was a robust exercise featuring nearly all major agencies of government at all levels of governance making presentations. There were divergent submissions, some opposing, mostly not the entire bills but clauses and others, amendment and additions. The Kano State government specifically challenged the constitutional basis of certain provisions of the bills, especially those granting the federal government extensive powers over state and local tax authorities. The proposed reduction in funding for key national agencies as State Fund, NITA, and NASENI, which are considered critical to Nigeria's education, technology, and engineering sectors, was also addressed. These and more formed major part of the public hearing. Well, leadership of the National Assembly gave assurance the legislature would approach the reforms outlined in the bills thoughtfully while considering proposals and recommendations received from stakeholders in the final report. Time now to have a feel of this session.
The first issue I would like to raise is with regards to the Nigerian tax bill itself. Specifically, I want to talk about the section to do with value-added tax. We fully support a lot of the things that are contained in that bill, but specifically, we want to mention that it will be of great benefit for this committee to consider making exports from Nigeria to be zero rated. That way, exporters from Nigeria will be competitive globally. We would also like to mention that, and this is tied to the section to do with the Stamp Duty Act, we are of the view that agreements, contracts that are already subject to the value-added tax rules should not be subject to ad valorem value-added tax. Sorry, stamp duty, I mean. I think that is the other aspect I would like to talk about. In a way, it creates a form of double taxation if this area is not looked into. Mr. Chairman, we also would like to advocate with regards to the currently subsisting executive orders. And our view on it is simple. Most of the executive orders are tied to laws that will be repealed by the time the current bill is passed into law. Our view, which we seek for this committee to take into account, is to ensure that the provisions in those executive orders are fully reflected in the Nigerian tax bill. That way, it will take away all forms of ambiguity, and it will also not create a situation where investors' confidence in the country is in any way dampened. Mr. Chairman, the next area we want to talk about is still on the Nigerian tax bill, is with regards to the deferral of claim of capital allowance. And our advocacy is very simple. That will be paragraph 21, subparagraph 1 of the first schedule of the Nigerian tax bill. Our advocacy point is very simple and straightforward. We would like the bill as currently drafted to give full powers to taxpayers to be able to determine how they claim capital allowances. Doing so will not in any way shortchange the government, but rather it will create a situation where the government is able to receive in good time taxes that are due. So that advocacy point is what it is.
Because of time constraint, I'd like to just briefly touch on the bills that we have mentioned here. We have actually touched on the entire 4 bills. The Nigerian Tax Administration Bill 2024, the Nigerian Revenue Service Establishment Bill, the Joint Revenue Board Establishment Bill, and the Nigerian Tax Bill. We had forwarded our opinion as a body to the office that is concerned with this process. I will officially adopt the memoranda that we have submitted, touching on all of the bills. Because of time, we'll not be able to look at them chapter by chapter. We have done a detailed work, particularly section by section, that we felt things that are expected to be done there, and we also adopted all that we have submitted. I thank you very much for listening to me.
Mr. Chairman, let me make 1 or 2 general observations first. There should be put on record that the government and people of Kano are in support of reforms, and in particular, we're in support of fiscal reforms that would expand the fiscal space in this country and that would engender efficiency in the operation of the fiscal system. We think that it's unrealistic to expect Nigeria to survive on revenues that are barely 10% of our GDP. We know that we are doing much less than what other economies are doing. The sub-Saharan Africa, we are doing much less than, we are doing worse than countries like South Africa and Rwanda and Ghana and so on. And therefore it is important, it's imperative that we reform the fiscal system. We think that the tax system in this country is complex and cumbersome, that in spite of past reforms that we have had, that is still, administration is still weak, is riddled with inefficiency and corruption and poor governance and so on and so forth. So we are in support of the federal government for initiating the tax reforms. Having said that, Mr. Chairman, we are also saying that the House of Representatives and the Senate have responsibility to ensure that this is handled judiciously and responsibly, that whatever tax system we propose, whatever fiscal system we propose, is based on three key principles of justice, of fairness, and equity. That it is the responsibility of the House to ensure that when you pass this bill, you do not put additional burden on the citizens of this country, that it is important that you do not exacerbate the uneven development of federating units. It is important to bear this in mind, and this comment applies to all the bills that you are likely to pass. Mr. Chairman, there are specific recommendations that we make. With regards to the Nigerian tax bill, we think that the review and harmonization of multiple taxes in this country is welcome, is overdue. We think that harmonization would enhance clarity, it would enhance compliance, and also engender efficiency and legislative coherence. So this is excellent. Number two, the review of incentives is also welcome because it will address issues of effectiveness. We think that there are lots of there are issues of effectiveness and efficiency and governance in the administration of incentives in this country, so it's welcome. We welcome the provisions for progressive taxation. We think that this is also long overdue to do so. So then we go to other specific recommendations with regards to VAT. I'm sure lots of people will be interested in this one. We do not think that we should contemplate any increases in VAT rates at this time. We think that there is a need for the government to expand the fiscal space, but when inflation is at 34% and VAT is a consumption tax, we do not think that this is the right time for us to contemplate increasing the VAT rates. We think there is room for improvement in collection efficiency. We understand that collection efficiency is less than 40% as far as VAT is concerned. We think that there's a room for that, and we know that the tax system is responsive to such policy changes. So I think the initial focus should be on improving efficiency, coverage, and efficiency. With regards to the distribution formula, we think that these three principles are good. They are excellent. Population, equality, and derivation. If you apply them judiciously and responsibly, I think they will address our concerns for efficiency, for justice and fairness and equity. However, I think we have to be aware of the difficulties the committee has in defining and interpreting what derivation is. So what are we recommending? We are saying that the current framework in the Act, not in the bills, the current framework in the Act, which provides for a horizontal distribution of 15% to the federal government, 50% to the states, and 35% to the local government, should be retained for a transitional period of 2 years, a transitional period of 2 years within which we'll be able to get sufficient data that will justify the derivation principle. For the vertical formula, we are saying that what obtains in the Act, population 30%, equality 50%, and derivation 20 should also be retained for a transitional period of 2 years. I mean, that can be negotiated maybe 2 years or 1 year, but it's for us to be able to understand exactly what data we use in having the derivation principles. We are of the view that you have laws to strengthen institutions, not to destroy them. And therefore, the provision that these 3 institutions of government which cease to access funds should be reconsidered. In other words, TED Fund and MITA and the SENI should continue to access the development levy, and that their fund should be a beneficiary of the current 4% development levy. Finally, Mr. Chairman, in line with the section 162, subsection 2 of the Constitution, we think that RAMFAC should be allowed to exercise its mandate in proposing what the formula should be. I know the controversy between the committee and RAMFAC, whether they have the responsibility to do that. I think government should not attempt overtly or covertly to undermine its institutions. That this is something that you don't have to debate that in public. I think the committee and the institutions, RAMFAC, should be able to come to terms with those.
Observe jurisdictional conflict between the provisions of the Joint Revenue Board Bill, Section 23 and 29 of the bill, and Section 41A of the Joint Revenue Bill. Basically, these are jurisdictional conflict issues. In the Nigerian Revenue Service Established Bill, Section 1 seeks to completely legislate Nigeria Customs Service out of existence, if you pardon my words. So we raised our objection, our observation also on Section 4S. And in Section 4S, this is also another omnibus provision. This particular provision gives the proposed NRS oversight functions over all taxes and levies. And as observed by the distinguished professor earlier, we are worried that this new law is seeking to override all previous laws that were done to address issues regarding the economy. I think it's also important, as we try to do on page 5 or page 4 of the document, that the substitution of the word tax, the substitution of the word duty by tax in very many areas of the bill seems to overlook the difference and the objective which these two tools can do in an economy. Our understanding is that tax is used to generate revenue for government, and it's also used to distribute wealth. However, duty goes beyond that. Duty is more of a fiscal policy tool, an instrument by government to encourage industrialization, to discourage environmental pollution, and to put in some kind of public health order. In subsequent parts of the paper, we went on to identify the professional nature of the customs calling, which we believe are not related in any way to either general taxation or specific taxation. And these are the areas of HS classification, in the areas of valuation, and the areas of rules of origin. Because one of the objectives of this legislation is to bring us in tandem with global best practice. The paper that we submitted highlighted
lessons that we have learned from many countries that have walked this route. And we picked out the World Customs Organization, for example. The data that we have from the World Customs Organization indicated that 179 out of 185 countries separate customs functions from tax revenue functions. But we went beyond that. We consulted studies that was done by OECD. There were a number of case studies that were published, and we attached this in the reference. And permit me to just read a particular case. While the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development in 2022 reports on tax and customs administration integration initially appeared to support integration models, their more recent and refined study, which was done in 2023, just about 2 years ago, reached substantially different conclusions. In this updated research, it was specifically acknowledged that the previous assessments which the research did may have overemphasized short-term revenue gains at the expense of long-term trade facilitation and security outcomes. The rest of the findings of this particular OECD studies is as attached or is as indicated on page 9.
So the Atlantic that you made the example of, they don't need to export sand. They just need to stay within their zone and they'll be exempted. When they export, they'll be exempted. There is no law today, not the NEPSA Act, not the Oil and Gas Act, no other law that says when you bring it to the custom territory, you can sell without paying taxes. And there's no country where they're doing that.
By exporting your 10 naira cost goods to Ghana, to Togo, to anywhere, it's okay. But when you want to come and sell in Nigeria, you said I should fold my hand. You produce your own goods because you don't pay tax as 10 naira. You come to custom area, you sell it at 15 naira. The person in custom area that is paying us taxes that we are using to do the road, to provide the electricity, to do all those things, has produced its own at 25. You come to cut the market and you are selling at 15. So if how can the person that is doing what we need will compete?
One of our concerns could be found on second schedule of Section 60 of the Nigeria tax bills. Briefly, the provision of the tax bill on the free trade zone should be upheld as it offers clarity and aligns with the intent and letters of the enabling laws. We believe that it does not in any way jeopardize the incentives offered to the operators within the zone.
Those have contributed, they have put their money down based on a law. You change the law on 1 week notice, that is unfair. And the people will end up in litigation. So I'm not issuing a threat, I'm just appealing that we should have more engagement with them. Let us have something that works for all of us.
The issue of going to law, saying that derivation should be 60%, this should be this, it is not everything you put in a law. There are subsidiary legislation, guidelines. Don't go and put everything in a law. Leave it to guidelines. Nigerian National Revenue Service with National Fiscal Commission, Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission, that's their own job. They sit down, state government, local government, politically, they now determine how to share this revenue.
The tax reform bills under consideration include the Nigeria Tax Bill, the Nigeria Tax Administration Bill, the Nigeria Revenue Service Establishment Bill, and the Joint Revenue Board Establishment Bill. They represent critical proposals from the executive to expand Nigeria's tax base, improve compliance, and establish sustainable revenue streams for our nation's development. As you are all aware, the tax reform bills have generated widespread debate in the media, public domain, and even in private discussions, all reflecting their importance. It should be noted, however, that these debates are healthy and necessary for consolidating our democratic practice and culture. Therefore, The purpose of this public hearing is to foster robust discussions and harvest recommendations by providing stakeholders the opportunity to make their inputs. Importantly, this public hearing will help us identify areas requiring amendment, clarification, and improvement, while also considering the compatibility of these bills with the 1999 Constitution as amended and other extant laws. We have therefore set aside 3 days for the public hearing to enable as many stakeholders as possible to air their views and make their recommendations. Right from the onset of the 10th House, we identified tax reform as a key priority area in our legislative agenda because of the central role of tax in achieving sustainable economic growth and development. In every modern state, taxes are the bedrock of public revenue, providing the resources required to deliver education, healthcare, infrastructure, and security. Yet, Nigeria, despite being Africa's largest economy, struggles with a tax to GDP ratio of just 6%, which is far below the global average and the World Bank's minimum benchmark of 15% for sustainable development. This is a challenge we must address if we are to reduce our reliance on debt financing and ensure fiscal stability and secure our future as a nation. As we interact today, let me reiterate that the proposed tax reform bills aim to diversify our revenue base, promote equity, and foster an enabling environment for investment and innovation. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu administration is deliberate in the administration's tax reform programs, ostensibly to improve Nigeria's tax to GDP ratio by streamlining and broadening the tax base. However, as representatives of the people, I have continued to hold the view that we must approach these reforms thoughtfully, understanding the potential implications for every segment of society. Taxes should be fair, transparent, and justifiable, balancing the need for public revenue with the burdens they impose on individuals and businesses. The House will, therefore, scrutinize these bills thoroughly, ensuring they align with the best interests of our constituents and the nation at large. We owe this duty to Nigerians, and as the People's House, we must always accommodate the people's interests. Together, let us seize this opportunity to bring forth a tax system that serves the best interests of all Nigerians. Let me assure the stakeholders present here and all Nigerians that the House will give deserved attention to every contribution while working assiduously to ensure the passage of the bills.
Tax laws and consolidate the legal framework relating to taxation and enact the Nigeria Tax Act to provide for taxation of income, transactions and instruments, and for related matters. This bill harmonizes all existing tax laws into a single, comprehensive and simplified piece of legislation. By doing so, it eliminates ambiguities, ensures consistency, and provides clarity for taxpayers and tax administration alike. 2. The Nigerian Tax Administration Bill. This bill seeks to establish a clear and structured process for tax administration, creating a more transparent and efficient tax system. It covers assessment, collection, and accounting for revenue accruing to federal, state, and local government. It also prescribes the powers and functions of revenue authorities. The third bill to be considered is the Nigerian Revenue Service Establishment Bill. This bill seeks to repeal the Federal Inland Revenue Service Establishment Act and establishes the Nigerian Revenue Service. The NRS will be responsible for collecting all federal taxes, ensuring better collaboration among revenue agencies across the three tiers of government and reducing inefficiencies in tax administration. The objective of this bill is to streamline tax processes, simplify tax administration, strengthen enforcement of tax laws, and progressively reduce the cost of revenue collection. And of course, finally, the Nigeria Joint Revenue Service Bill, Joint Board Service Bill. This bill seeks to establish the Joint Revenue Board, the Tax Appeal Tribunal, and the Office of Tax Ombudsman for the harmonization, coordination, promotion of the rights of taxpayers and tax dispute resolution and related matters. This board will be responsible for resolving disputes between various services, advising on tax policy matters, and proposing amendments to tax laws where necessary. Together, these four bills represent a transformative step for the Nigerian tax system by streamlining tax laws, improving administration, and enhancing revenue collection. They will set the nation on a path of sustainable economic growth while ensuring that taxpayers contribute their fair share.
So we thank everybody that has taken time to be here this afternoon. The numbers here confirmed the importance attached to these bills. And we hope that we'll have a very, very interactive session. A lot of submissions have been made. We hope to make this session very, very interactive. We assure the general public that the report that the committee will lay and that will be considered in the House will reflect the opinions that will be shared by the general public.
Ahead of the public hearing, House Committee on Persons with Disabilities, PWDs, made cases for deliberate tax-friendly policies and establishment of trust fund for persons with disabilities in Nigeria. Chairman of the committee, Mr. Bashiru Dawudu, in a meeting with a group of civil society organizations and the disability community for the official signing of Memorandum of Understanding (MOU) for PWD's potential unhinged project, said the committee's interest is that there should be tax credits and waivers for PWDs. This, he said, would be the committee's submission at the public hearing. The lawmaker on the mic.
The Act does not talk about children with disabilities, doesn't talk about women with disabilities. And we think that these are very, very important and straightforward areas. It is also important to note that the House is still not giving up on this. The House has passed several motions towards the compliance to the Act, which is still ongoing. What else is going on here? We're talking about amendment of the Electoral Act, because we think that our folks still have challenges relating to politics. And the law says that they must have unfettered access to politics and governance in Nigeria. So we have a situation where there are still issues with voting with PWDs. And there are still issues with, contesting for the election. What else is going on? Constitutional amendment. We are very interested in, domiciling the things that are in the Act in the Constitution. Because now, if you are trying to fight a case on the Disability Act, and a smart lawyer comes and says, okay, actually that is not constitutional. So, but if it's present in the Act and it's also in the Constitution, that will be easier situation in the court. Now, what is trending right now is tax reform. And make no mistake about it. The statement of tax is about governance. It's about how you see your people. The committee feels that PWDs should not pay tax. Because if you're someone that is on a wheelchair, you have three people to deal with. You have yourself, you have the wheelchair, and you have the aid. So I know generally it says that there's a limit for that. So we're interested in the income tax, that beyond limit, the rates should be reduced almost to nothing. We also think that apart from that particular income situation, we think that there should be tax credits for folks that are doing right by the law. So if you're a corporation, a business that is retrofitting your building so that it can be accessible to persons with disability, we think you should have tax credit in that regard. We think that if you're employing persons with disability, you should have tax credit. So we are looking at the tax credit in terms of tax relief. Tax relief will be exemptions, waivers, and credits. And we're also looking at tax incentives How do you incentivize a businessman to manufacture wheelchair here? Probably if we say that it's tax exempt, the man might do that. We're interested in waivers when it comes to custom duties for accessibility materials. When it comes to certain pharmaceuticals, for example, persons with albinism that need to buy sunscreen, those things are extremely expensive. So we know in the bill it talks about pharmaceuticals, but we would like it to be very specific to PWDs in that particular regard. So the tax issue is really hot right now, but we're active participants in it.
To other businesses, a couple of other sessions outside the plenary also held within the week. We go first with a public hearing on a bill seeking establishment of a National Security and Intelligence Trust Fund. Chairman of the Committee on National Security and Intelligence, Mr. Ahmed Satomi, affirmed the proposal will make a significant step towards addressing Nigeria's security challenges.
Funds will be deployed to the training and retraining of personnel of Nigerian security agencies. Provision of the state-of-the-art security and intelligence equipment and other necessary infrastructure-related facilities for the enhancement of the technical competency and operational readiness of our security personnel in all areas of their operation. Furthermore, the funds will ensure the upgrade and maintenance of the training institution to global standards, make resources available for research and development, including the utilization of outcome of such research to bring the intelligence agencies, the armed forces and relevant paramilitary agencies at par with the world-best security agencies in this digital age. Over the years, Nigerian intelligence agencies have been grossly underfunded. Rather, more resources have been devoted to kinetic responses to our nation's security challenges. The truth, which is globally recognized, is that the kinetic operation cannot sustainably guarantee the provision of peace and security in any country. At best, the contribution of kinetic responses to sustainability of peace and security cannot exceed 30% at most. Therefore, it is time to lay more emphasis on intelligence gathering, intelligence sharing, and collaborative deployment and utilization of actionable intelligence.
As you are aware, the security of life and property is a very vital nation-building tool. It is most effective instrument in attracting investments and ensuring the development of our country. Therefore, the importance of security cannot be overemphasized, especially in a country like ours, where all efforts are being made to attract investment and create opportunities for our teeming youth. I must admit that it has been a major challenge in our country. Therefore, we cannot gloss over the loss of human lives and resources arising from banditry, kidnapping, armed robbery, oil and solid mineral theft, insurgencies, among others. These have had a combined effect of scaring investors and creating humanitarian challenges through displacement of families. They have also created issues such as food security arising from the devastation of farms as a result of kidnapping in our forests. It is therefore imperative that we use the instrumentality of the law to effectively address these challenges.
The issues of tax, just wanted to highlight, sir, because the language says that the fund shall be, as it were, exempt from all the provisions of tax laws. We just wanted to highlight that, might need to be moderated, because, for instance, sir, the tax laws provide a number of obligations. It's not only to pay tax. The tax law provides obligation for entities to register for tax purposes, provides obligation for entities, whether they are private or government owned, to render the returns of the pay as you earn of their staff. The tax law also provides for that this fund, which is when established, shall be, sir, like any ministry, department or agency of government. And we have an obligation to withhold taxes from contracts that are awarded and to pay VAT because the VAT Act as of today does not exempt it or any such bodies. So there will be such obligations, which is different from paying taxes on the inflow received by the fund.
Another public hearing on some bills seeking establishment of 10 colleges of education had stakeholders deliberating. Here, Speaker Abbas Tajuddin made a statement that there are about 205 federal, state and privately owned colleges of education across the country remain inadequate to meet the educational needs of the country. We have here some excerpts.
Has 205 federal, state and privately owned colleges of education. On the face value, this number looks substantial. However, when considered against the backdrop of Nigeria's population of about 230 million, with over 60% under the age of 24 years, the demand for education makes the number of existing colleges of education in Nigeria quite insignificant. Therefore, these bills seeking to establish 10 colleges of education should be seen as relevant, appropriate, and justified. The bills under consideration today reflect our collective commitment as lawmakers to ensuring that every region of our country has equitable access to quality teacher education. The establishment of new federal colleges of education will not only improve the training of professional teachers, but will also foster educational development, create employment opportunities, and stimulate socio-economic growth in the host communities. The House recognizes the urgent need to expand access to quality teacher education, especially in underserved regions.
Education remains the bedrock of national development, and as representatives of the people, we are committed to ensuring that every Nigerian, regardless of their location or socio-economic backgrounds, have access to quality teacher education. The establishment of new federal colleges of education is a critical step in addressing the gaps in teacher training, strengthening our education sector, and building the skilled workforce needed to drive national progress.
The need for a federal colleges of education in Ijesha is very vital in view of the fact that the need for the shortage of teachers in my constituents in Lagos State and in Nigeria. This College of Education will enhance teaching and will make sure that our children, our words, get the best of what is required in this 21st century.
But intriguingly, of these three emirates that started in Niger State, the Bida Emirate today has 4 institutions of higher learning, including a federal polytechnic. Kontagora today has 3 institutions, including a federal university. And even smaller emirates, such as Mina has 5, including a federal university, and Lopai has a university. But interestingly, Suleja, in spite of the sacrifices we've made all these years, do not have a single institution of higher learning. In spite of our population, in spite of the cosmopolitan nature of that entity, and in spite of the sacrifices that have been made. And we are only here today to say that we are appealing to the federal government of Nigeria to look at us again. The fact that Niger State did not make any investment in the creation of institutions of higher learning in Suleja was only because of the expectation that such facilities will be provided by the federal government because of the sacrifices we made.
We are now at the Senate. Senators in the previous week voiced strong condemnation on the removal of the Chief Judge of Benue State, Justice Maurice Ikpengbese, by the Benue State House of Assembly. The Senate, while adopting a point of order raised by the minority leader, Senator Abamoro, Benue South, described the action as constitutional breach. Here.
The Senate knows that the National Assembly, amongst other things, has a responsibility as the highest lawmaking body in Nigeria to protect and preserve the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, to ensure compliance, prevent violations, and ensuring the Constitution remains the supreme law of the land. The Senate knows further that there is a looming constitutional crisis currently in Benue State, and if not nipped in the bud, may spring to become a great threat to democracy and rule of law in the entire country. The said crisis stems from the purported removal of Justice Ikpengbese Maurice, the Chief Judge of Benue State, by the State House of Assembly without having recourse to the tenets of the law. The Senate knows further that the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 1999 as amended, states explicitly in Section 153 and 271 that the National Judicial Council is the only body that authorizes the appointment and removal of state chief judges, and the Constitution in the said sections goes further to state the procedures for appointment and removal of state judges, and anything outside the provisions of the Constitution is a direct affront to the Constitution and a danger to democracy. Note lastly that Section 292(1)(a) of the aforementioned Constitution expressly provides for the step-by-step procedure for the removal of the state chief judges. However, the Benue State House of Assembly, with either ignorance of what the law says or with intention to make a caricature of our ground norm, the Constitution, went ahead to sit and pass a resolution just by themselves purporting to have removed the Chief Judge of Benue State, a resolution that brings a great insult to the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 1999 as amended, and if not reversed, may lead to abuse of the powerful document that provides for the entire country. The Senate accordingly resolves, 1, to urge the National Judicial Council to immediately step in and nip the looming crisis in the bud and take steps to rescind the illegal and unconstitutional resolution purportedly removing Justice Maurice Ikpengbese, the Chief Judge of Benue State. 2, invite the Speaker and the Majority Leader of the Benue State House of Assembly to explain the circumstances of their illegal actions. And 3, urge the National Assembly to carry out its constitutional duty under Section 11(4) of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 1999 as amended, to take over the affairs of the Benue State House of Assembly in view of the demonstrable act of incompetence by the section of the House of Assembly to defend the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria if they fail to appear or fail to rescind the purported removal of Justice Maurice Ikpengbese or avoidable suspension of some members of the Benue State House of Assembly who refuse to participate in the illegality of removing the state chief judge. We so move, Mr. President.
I just wanted to draw attention to what you have already said, SP, the Mr. Senate President, which is that yesterday, from all the news channels, clearly today, the National Judicial Council yesterday sat and took a decision and made it public, making it clear that it is their constitutional responsibility to sanction a serving member of the bench, and in any case, to begin the process of removing the chief judge of Benue State or of any other state. They have already done so. They have already done so. I read a statement also from the Nigerian Bar Association condemning what is going on, the purported removal of the chief judge of Benue State. So I feel that at this point in time, and this is a developing scenario, it's a developing situation. So I feel that the motion that has been brought by our very distinguished and respected colleagues shows concern, which we all associate with. But the prayers, for me, we should express concern about what is going on. In Benue, nobody, no governor, no House of Assembly, no other political player or institution should be allowed to disrupt the constitutional order provided as to how a judge of the chief judge of the state can be removed.
So we should refer this matter to our committee on judiciary and legal matters to investigate same and report back to the Senate within 2 weeks. Those in support of this additional prayer say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Let me thank distinguished Senator Abba Moro for the non-partisan approach to this issue. Because Benue said it's an APC state, and you are the minority leader from PDP, but you can see that you have support from your APC counterparts from Benue State, which means I think that bipartisan approach is something that the Senate must commend. And at the same time, I also thank you for your concern about the possibility of the crisis degenerating into violence. And I believe strongly that with the resolutions of the Senate backing the NJC, condemning what has just taken place in Benue State, and further referring the matter to its committee on judiciary and legal matters to do further investigation and revert to the Senate for further legislative action, that I think we are in the right track. So I thank you, and I do pray that even before the chairman and members of this committee go into work, that the issue would have been resolved in the national interest.
As a forward proceeding, I leave you with just a bit of the drama that ensued on the floor of the Senate over seating arrangement. And that's today's package. Join us Friday next week at 8 p.m. when we come again with new legislative activities. Till then, remember to watch all previous editions on our YouTube channel, ASO Radio and Television. Like our page and please subscribe. I am Rosemary Ukokotega.